the last meeting?
He was.
Okay, so we just need him, and it looks like Martha, you're on mute.
All right, Amy, FYI, we're
I'm
live.
telling my son not to play Xbox during this, so I don't lose my.
I was going to say, which Martha? I think we both
No,
are.
I just saw Martha Raymond's mouth moving,
Talking.
but
telling Jack no Xbox. Can't take
Oh,
up the
yeah. Okay, so we just need John, and then we'll get a move on.
John's
Oh, there's
here.
John.
Yep.
All right, and John's got a new background too. Okay, so then I am going to call to order at 7 o'clock the Swampscott Public Schools School Committee regular session meeting on Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020 at 7 p.m. This virtual meeting is being held in accordance with the executive order issued by Governor Baker on March 12th, 2020, suspending certain provisions for the open meeting law. And so I want to begin. I got a question this week about why we weren't holding the Pledge of Allegiance, and I just wanted to acknowledge it publicly, that while we are operating on Zoom, we have suspended holding off on the Pledge of Allegiance because none of us have flags in our homes, and sort of sparing the awkward standing, alone in our offices or wherever we are, and a screen full of crotch shots, we figured we would hold off on the Pledge of Allegiance until we were in sort of more official circumstances. And that this is not a sign that we are doing away with the Pledge of Allegiance in our schools. This is not a political statement. It is merely a function of operating on Zoom. So I appreciate the question this week and am happy to clarify that. So with that, I am going to, it doesn't say so this week, but I am going to hold public comment if anybody would like to. I would like to limit it to the first 5 people that we hear from. Suzanne, do you have a recommendation of what is the best way for us to do that? Sorry to put you on the spot.
People could, I don't know. We don't have Q&A. We don't have the ability, this isn't a webinar, so we don't have the ability to have our attendees talk unless we promote them. But if someone wants to talk, we can just promote them to, we can promote them to the panelists so they can talk.
Okay, so we'll do that.
Have them raise their hand, is that?
Yeah, I mean, if someone
Okay.
Amy, if someone's watching this on Facebook or YouTube Live or one of those, they can, I think, isn't my text on the agenda or my phone number on the agenda for people to text?
No, in fact, on this, yeah, this week's agenda, it's not on at all. Neither is public comment, but I figured since we have a light, agenda, I don't anticipate this being another 3-hour meeting that.
Well, I can write my phone number and hold it up. People can text if they want,
That would be nice. Thank you. So for public comment, I'll give it a little bit of time and maybe we'll hold it after community announcements, but you can either hold your hand up on the participant list on Zoom, or you can text Suzanne Wright at
617-821-5075. I'm writing it down.
Madam Chair, can I introduce the student representatives now since they will be participating in community comment?
That would be wonderful. We are excited.
So I'm excited. I had the privilege every year when there's new school committee student representatives, I take an opportunity to meet with them before their first school committee meeting to go over a meeting and what it's like and what their roles are and how their voices as students is important. And that if they had a request to put something on the agenda, they would just come to me and do that. And so I got into we had a great conversation. I felt like I was having, lunch with some friends and learning about what their futures hold for them and what they're looking forward to. So let's start with Ms. Tabitha Randall. Do you want to tell us a little about yourself, tell the committee, and what your hopes and dreams are for your future?
Hi, so I'm Tabitha Randall. I'm a senior at Swampscott High School now. I consider myself active in a lot of school clubs like the math team, the Enviro Club, the Political Action Club. I really like school. That sounds like stupid. I like to learn and I like subjects like math particularly. In the future, I hope to attend college and study mathematics and political science, and hopefully find a career where I can make a change in the world. That's what I see myself doing.
Love it. It all starts here, Tabitha, with your role as a school committee student representative. And also next, and certainly not least, Myra Diaz.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
You're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, should I just switch over my phone?
Uh-oh.
Myra, if you turn off your video, then we'll be able to hear your audio more clearly, most likely. So try that. Myra, if you turn off your video, then we'll be able to hear your try that.
Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yes.
A little better. Is that better?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So hi, my name is Myra Diaz, and I'm gonna be a senior this year. And I was captain of the basketball cheer team last year, and I'm gonna be captain of the football cheer team this year. And I've been on the student council since freshman year for MECO representative. And some of my favorite classes are mostly English. I'm not a big math fan like Tabitha, but I still get the job done with math. And I really want to pursue my career in being a nurse practitioner when I'm older, and probably going to Simmons or just staying locally here.
Yeah, Myra expressed an interest in staying in the Boston area, which was great.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Myra.
Thank you, Myra. Suzanne, something happened. The numbers were correct before and now they're reading backwards.
Oh, it's so funny. I was there. How's that?
Oh, there you go.
Because when I
Perfect.
looked, they're backwards. So I just wrote them backwards and now they're. It's so funny. It's backwards to me.
Myra and Tabitha, thank you. We're really happy that you guys have joined us, and on behalf of all of us here on the school committee, if you ever have any questions or want to talk to us individually, please feel free to reach out to us. Our emails are on the school. We have school, so we're the same as everybody else. We're A. O'Connor, C. Marshall, so you can find us there, as well as just give Superintendent Angelakis's office a call, and you can get our numbers if you need it.
Thank you.
So let me see if there are any, if everybody can put themselves on mute. I'm going to see if there are any participants who've raised their hands. So it's strange. I'm hearing a lot of background noise, even though. Okay. Suzanne, I don't see anybody raising their hand on Zoom, so unless somebody texts you.
Nope, I have nothing.
All right, then let's move into community announcements. Karen?
So I don't have much. I just want to say it's good to be back in school in some form or fashion, and I hope everybody is doing well. And to our new school committee reps, I really hope to get to sit with you guys in person at some point during the year, that we can have a regular, meeting in person and really get to know you guys. That's all.
Ted?
Hi as well. Welcome to the school reps. Two things. One, just this week, there was a long tenured teacher, Dawn Hallett, that passed away. I don't know if any of you know, had the opportunity to meet Mr. Hallett. He was an incredible phys ed teacher. He was also an incredible driver's ed teacher. Maybe later tonight, shoot a prayer up for him and his family. Great guy, great guy. The only other thing is, I hope that the community realizes over 2,000 devices have been distributed. With that is an immense responsibility. I think we should all recognize the tech team, the tech ninjas, Latanya and her crew. Incredible rollout. With that, we should also remember that there are people that sometimes want to infiltrate, for the lack of a bad word, with a virus or scam. Or I would just ask parents to be on their toes with their children when we're doing the virtual education. But to roll out 2,000 devices, I think is an accomplishment. And I know that there are some glitches, but we're getting there. So just thank you.
John, do you have anything?
Just a couple quick things. Thank you, Amy. Again, welcome to the student reps. Happy to have you guys here. And just about the start of school, I think, just talking to my children, talking to some of their friends, they are all excited to be back. I think it's wonderful that we finally reached this point. And it's really glad for me to see, I know others, to see, the kids happy to be back. And I just wanted to pass that along. It's very gratifying to see.
And last but not least, Suzanne.
I want to give out a quick hello to the reps, and I'm excited that Amira, you're interested in nursing, because it'd be fun to include you on some of the policy stuff we're thinking about right now for the COVID related stuff. It'd be cool for you to just listen into that if you're interested. And I want to thank Miss Huntley for showing me inside of Stanley last week. It was kind of fun to walk into the school and see things getting back to, I hate this expression, but the new normal. And the classrooms looked awesome, and the teachers that were in there were really excited, and it was just fun to see them all. I was out on the field, and a whole bunch of teachers were eating lunch out there. It was just sort of, it felt good. It felt like real back to school. That was awesome. And I want to give a shout out to teachers. I don't want to name them by name, but on Facebook this week, some parents were giving shout outs to individual teachers and really just writing really sweet things. And it was just nice to see that people were really happy with what they were seeing in their kids' Zooms and stuff. It was just sort of, it was fun to read something nice that wasn't complaining, or, people sort of just you could almost feel the collective sigh of relief that it was actually going as well, if not better than expected. So that was really exciting to just read that feel good news. Yeah, that's it.
So I will echo that a little bit. it was almost like the release valve has been opened, because everybody, it seems like, has taken a collective sigh of relief to know that we have started school again, and that a lot of the, well, you know, what ifs and what and the fears are, I think, alleviated a little bit. I think that there's still a lot of, I don't want to, I know, Pam, that nobody on your team is. I just want to make sure that we're all still on guard and making sure that we're sharing as much information as possible. I've been really impressed by the communications that have been shared with the school committee from all of the teachers, ranging from not just the teachers and administrators, ranging from the pre-K, you know, the preschool up right through high school. So, you know, I think we need our parents now more than ever. So we just have to keep the information going. So I am happy to see parking lots full, which means that people are in their classrooms, and that we're off to a new school year. So I want to say thank you to you, Pam, and all of your team for what I can't even imagine, you know, was something that in your whole career you never could have prepared for. So that's it. With that, we'll move on to you, Superintendent, and your update.
I'm not sure if Tabitha or Myra have anything besides introducing themselves tonight for community comment. Did you want to?
So for the student reps, oftentimes, and you know, don't ever feel obliged to, but it's a great opportunity if you do have something to share. In the past, when we have kids who are in, you know, sharing things about theater, or they're sharing things about the student government, or they're sharing information about what might not be going well, or what might be going particularly well. But I think it is, it's a great opportunity for you to share if you want to, but it's not, if you don't have anything, it's totally fine to say I'm all set.
No. I told them to come prepared at every meeting.
Oh, okay. Then listen to the superintendent.
All right. So what I wanted to talk about was the new schedule that we have, because I don't know if it's the same throughout all the schools, but at least for the high school, we now have 8 total periods. We have 4 on like one day, then the other 4 the next day, Wednesdays being like a half day. So you have every period for 20 minutes. And then again, like the first 4 classes and second 4 classes repeat for Thursday, Friday. And except for the half day, we are starting at 9 a.m. for like not the teachers, but for the students at least. And I've seen like a really, like, that's been really positively accepted with a lot of students, and even like teachers included, that they've really enjoyed being able to have classes not start at like 8:10 as like normal school years, but start later in the day. And kids have also enjoyed having 8 periods so they can take another class if it's something they're interested in. So I think that this is a change that like we can continue with after after like COVID, and we go back to a you know, normal school year. I think it's something that's really positive.
Well, I see that Mr. Kohut is on as an attendee, so he heard everything you said, Tabitha.
Kind of building back from the school schedule, I'm gonna start talking about the sports and everything for the fall season with COVID.
Great.
So I've talked to a fair amount of people from each sport, from like soccer to even my team. So they're just excited to have a season in general for the fall. And even the cheer team, we start tomorrow with like a whole bunch of strong like instructions and everything for practice. We have to stay 6 feet apart. Like, it's gonna be hard and everything, but I feel like everyone's so excited to just be able to do their sport this year and just be able to finish it on, like for the seniors on the team, just be able to have like a strong finish from high school.
That's great. So knowing that going ahead with athletics is making the kids happy and participating is makes me happy. Thank you, Myra.
All right, so Superintendent, I turn it over to you for your report.
Okay, great. I'm on the wrong computer. See, now I'm a co-host, I'm on the wrong computer. Suzanne, can you bring up my superintendent's report? Or if you give me a minute, I can definitely do it. Sorry. I had my agenda. Sorry, my apologies. It's like the microwave. When you watch it, it goes slowly. Why is this going so slow? Almost there. I'm sorry. Here we go.
Suzanne, is it something you can
I'll get it
stream
come
or?
up now. Sorry, it was
Okay,
just,
sorry.
it's like watching a pot of water boil. It's taking forever when you're watching it. I forget that I'm on two screens and I had the wrong one. There we go. Oh, is that you, Suzanne? Thank you. You're on mute. Okay, so I sent an email to the Swampscott Public Schools today and to school committee and some town leaders. I'm really excited to welcome here tonight the first time in our school district that we've had an occupational health nurse. It could be one of those silver linings as a result of this pandemic, which we're looking every day for silver linings and maybe articulating and identifying a need that the district has. And so tonight, as a panelist, at least for the beginning of a meeting, I've invited Mrs. Amanda Mulcahy to come here and introduce her to you as our new occupational health nurse. Amanda is an RN and she has 13 years of experience in the medical field, working as a medical assistant, an EMT, and a nursing assistant. Amanda and I have hit the ground running and developed a 30-day entry plan, and it includes a whole host of things. Meeting with the lead nurse, meeting with the nursing staff, individual nursing staff, visiting buildings, reaching out to the health department and making that connection, and reviewing COVID-related policies and procedures that we already have in place. We talked a bit about how we have done COVID policies here at school committee, and obviously I would like Amanda to review them. Amanda still has a hand in the boots on the ground work in addition to this occupational health nurse role, and so it's important that she review these as well. One of the other areas I've asked her to review is the athletic safety protocols that are going on for the fall athletics. I think it's important that we have another set of eyes on those. And in her role, Amanda is part of my central office team, my district crisis team, my health safety advisory committee, which is part of the teachers union. We call that the HSAC committee, and part of my leadership team. And when I say she hit the ground running, she hit the ground running. Today was her first day. She's already sent out a workplace welcome letter to the entire district, and she created and emailed a faculty and staff survey about how they feel with their workplace under the COVID circumstances. And I'm happy to report that when I checked about 15 minutes ago, we already have 43 responses on that survey. So in one day, she has accomplished, really hit the ground running on our 30-day entry plan. But I'm gonna turn it over to Amanda to say a few words, and welcome.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to help this school year be not only successful, but really safe. I'm currently working in a hospital right now, actively with COVID. I feel that there is a big coordination of trying to keep the town and school education as safe as possible. I know I have a very busy 30 days coming up. And within those 30 days, my goal is to really understand what's going on now, how it's processed, what the policies are, like Pamela talked about. But I also want to create a system with an up-to-date service, basically, where we can go in and look at the current data on how many children or faculty are sick at the time, also in the school system. I also want to try to develop a spreadsheet or like some sort of graphic. I haven't figured that out quite yet, on also like tracking the COVID contact and people who are faculty and students who need to be basically COVID tracking. So I know this is my first day and sorry, I'm a little bit all over the place, but I'm really excited to be part of the team, and thank you for the opportunity.
Can I jump in and ask either you, Superintendent, or you, Amanda, welcome to us. Can you talk a little bit for people who are not aware, what does it mean to be an occupational health nurse?
Well, I mean, I can chime in and say what I see the vision for this position being, and it's kind of what we talked about in terms of looking at the staff, looking at the track of the COVID, but also tying it to students. And, you know, we do have a lead nurse in the district who does yeoman's work with the building nurses. They all work incredibly hard. And I think this is one more support for them as well, but really making sure that, you know, as part of the Health Safety Advisory Committee, you know, the health and wellness of our buildings, of our facilities, of our staff, of our students. One of the things that I'm really excited about is the data piece that Amanda speaks of, and really keeping that data, making it available to families on a more regular basis and making it easily accessible. I think her first step in developing a staff workplace survey and figuring out how people are feeling. We can make decisions at the district level educationally, but there is a humanistic side to this and a medical side to this that I need somebody to focus their attention on in terms of how teachers are feeling and how staff is feeling. And no matter how much education our lead nurse and our building nurses have already done with the faculty and staff, it's nice to have another person to maybe come in and do backup and make sure that people are really comfortable with the way we're doing things. And I do think, you know, that her Amanda's email went out probably 3 o'clock this afternoon, and the fact that there's already 43 responses says to me that the faculty and staff have voices that they want to be heard, and there is somebody dedicated to address those right now.
Yeah, I agree with what she said. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, Amanda, welcome. I know that this is a position that happened really quickly, but probably the highest need and the quickest fill we've done in a while because of how important it is. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. You don't have to stick on if you have other things to attend to. The opening of schools, I'll just echo a lot of what people said. And part of what we talked about at a subcommittee meeting prior to this. I did building visits the first couple of days, as did our assistant superintendent, Mrs. Raymond. And it was really, really nice to see lots of teachers in their classrooms Zooming with their kids. I get to hop on the background and see the kids' faces Zooming and listen to their lessons. There was a phonics lesson going on over at Stanley School with Mrs. Coletti. And it was great to see these first graders knowing to unmute to say good morning to me. Their technology skills are admirable, and it was fun to see. I wanted to highlight the fact that I left a piece of information hanging at one of the last meetings, talking about the fact that we had about 75 requests for faculty and staff for leave, whether it was childcare leaves or medical leaves. And we have put a lot of time, energy, and effort into looking at each and every one of those, and we're down to approximately 15. And of those 15, we're still in the process of gathering more information. Not all of them have been approved yet, and that is what we're working towards and moving towards for our hybrid. So I think it's important to note how significantly that has dropped. I also think a big piece of that was the fact that the district made the decision to make it optional to teach remotely from their classrooms. And that was to allow us to continue with our facilities upgrades according to the LBA studies and make sure that every space was okay. But as you've noted, the parking lots have been full. There's teachers in the buildings, there's teachers having lunch outside. It's just the first 3 days where we're just, I think I've said to you, Mrs. O'Connor, that hope and optimism were there again. Seeing the little ones back, seeing our integrated preschool students walking outside with pool noodles between them because that was 6-foot distancing was just made my heart sore. So we've been off to a great start. Amy, did you have a question or you want me to finish this section? Okay, so as Mr. Delano said, I spoke with Miss Mackie Knowles this afternoon. She was unable to attend tonight because she's working with the ninjas at the high school till 6 o'clock. Then she's also helping with an athletics department webinar with Mrs. Farley. So we had a discussion following the preparation of the superintendent's report. And we do recognize that there has been an issue with Zoom on some of the Chromebooks. And one of the reasons she said that that's occurring is because we have recycled Chromebooks. Now, keep in mind, I was really proud of our district between Ms. Seibert and Ms. Mackie Knowles. They got ahead of the curve in the Commonwealth in terms of ordering our Chromebooks. So there are so many districts that are not getting their Chromebooks in till December. And they found a creative way to reuse some of what we already had and also get additional Chromebooks in. However, some of the Chromebooks that we already have don't have a sustainable enough memory or large enough memory, I should say, to run the Zoom properly. So in our budget subcommittee meeting a little bit ago, we were talking about ordering more Chromebooks so that we'd be able to replace those older models so that all students would have great access to that. In addition to that, we're finding there's an issue with the iPads. So because we're an educational institution and we are trying to be super safe with the iPads, we purchased something called Lightspeed, which is a filter. And what it would prevent is students being at home and ads popping up on their iPads from their home network. So therefore they would get adult ads if we didn't add this filter. What we were unaware of is that this Lightspeed filter does not allow for safe YouTube videos, which we implemented in the spring that were safer for younger students. So now these videos are going to have to go through YouTube. So as Mr. Delano said, with over 2,000 devices, we're going to have some glitches and bumps. I do just ask for the patience of everyone. I recognize it's frustrating when you're trying to do remote learning and things aren't going accordingly. I do know that the schools are sending out messages that if you're having trouble with this, this is who you contact. If you're having trouble with this, this is who you contact. And you should also just know that our tech department is working feverishly to make sure that these glitches and bumps are remedied as soon as possible. I also recognize and have heard from numerous parents that there were some glitches with the high school student schedules at the very first few days of schools. I did some circling back today, and it sounds like some of those scheduling conflicts have been ironed out. And I want to shout out to my high school administrative team of Mr. Norkin, Mr. Kohut, and Mrs. Finn, and the fact that the hours they've put in of contacting families in addition to the guidance department and trying to straighten out these schedule issues and making sure kids had classes and not a lot of study halls. It's important that they get what they need. And from the sounds of what Tabitha said, it sounds like it's going pretty well. So, you know, I do just ask for patience. This is not perfect. As I said in my reopening plan, you know, in theory, everything's wonderful. In practicality and practice, it doesn't always go as smoothly as you hope. One of the things that we've talked a lot about at my leadership team is how happy we are that we have followed this phased approach. I know that we want to get everyone in as soon as possible. Nobody wants that more than any of us, but keep in mind there's so much going on with facilities right now. The smaller cohort that is in is helping us poke holes in any areas or plans or protocols that we might have in place. We've implemented a protocol where there are sanitation signs on every single door of every single space, and the custodians flip them when the room is cleaned for students and staff. And when the teachers leave, they flip them to say this room is not sanitized. So it's a communication tool. In addition to that, we have established room occupancy and capacity signs outside of each and every space, because it's one thing when we're in meetings repeatedly with principals and department leaders to know what the occupancy should be under the LBA report, but a teacher or an ESP or a tutor is not going to come in and have those memorized. So we're getting those posted as well, so that if it's a room with 11 people capacity, that means if the teacher's in there and 10 students, another service provider cannot go in, they're going to have to pull out. So we're trying to come up with these nonverbal communication tools, and it's really in the last, week, total days, it's really allowed us to do that with a smaller cohort. But our first high needs cohort that came in, as I said, in visiting the schools has been very, very positive. And I'm going to throw it over to Assistant Superintendent Mrs. Raymond to give an update from her perspective.
Hi, hello everybody, how you doing? So our integrated preschool is in, our Discovery and Strive program at Stanley is in, our Discovery and Strive program at the middle school is in, and at the high school, our Harbor and Discovery program are all in. I was able to visit all of the programs. The teachers were all trained by Emily Silly, and I want to shout out to her for training them on use of PPE. PPE was distributed. We're still working on distributing it to other staff, but I really have to say, seeing the kids' smiling faces, masks have been on. Even kids that people predicted would not wear their mask, boy, they have them on. So I'm just so pleased that that the kids have been in. I've gotten a lot of feedback from parents too, that they're just so happy that their kids are back in person. And so are the teachers, right? I know it was that hard jump to come in, but it's working, and we're being, we're in supervising and making sure that we're distancing as much as possible. It's hard because teachers' instincts, and I know even my own instinct is you want to get close to the kids right away, but reminding them that we have to be really creative and how do we connect with people from the 6 feet distance. And it's hard, but they're really figuring out ways to do it. Also using the outdoor spaces. That's certainly something that we're going to keep even past the pandemic. I think having the increased movement opportunities is really a positive change to how we're educating students right now. So there's a lot of things that we've learned as well. In addition, we're getting our testing spaces. So classroom spaces are being utilized so that we can catch up on some of our testing of students for disabilities. So that's already starting. We're actually using the high school too. Mr. Coe's been great at allowing us our elementary staff and middle school staff, if needed, to utilize some of the spaces at the high school to catch up on the testing that did not occur during the spring closure. I do want to, our Zooms are going well. We're in the spring, our IEP services in Grid C, which are the direct service providing services, were reduced in capacity. We are now at full capacity. So whatever time we are looking at those services, that we are meeting those obligations, which is great. I do want to share though that I did have one of our OTs, Leah Guimont, who's at our preschool, came up with all recommendations for seating tips. So I do want families to be mindful of that, that with our kids on increased time on computers and being seated, they really have to take movement opportunities at home, and making sure that they're seated at the 90-90-90, right? Feet, hips, and shoulders, so that we're not with that increased screen time. So that part's really important, and that's being sent out to families too. So great start. I'm really, our next step is the plans that we have at Stanley Preschool, Middle, and High School are now being adapted for Clark and Hadley. And we want to get that next cohort of students in October 5th. And I think that's it. Yes. Amy, did you have a question?
I was wondering if you were planning on sharing that information with all families. It seems to me, I know when my kids were in the integrated program, there was a lot that was designed specifically for kids who have special needs that really benefited them as well.
Sure.
And it seems like that one of the things that when you're talking about posture and being at your desk is something that probably all of our kids who are spending too much time in front of a screen could benefit from.
So I shared it out with
Okay.
all our principals to share out with all our families, because you're exactly right. Obviously, that's applicable to every child. And it's something that sometimes parents won't think about because when we're, it's a shorter time frame, and that your kids are on a computer. It's far different now, right? Kids were moving between classes. They were moving within the classroom. If our kids are in their bedrooms and in a chair or at a kitchen table, or in a beanbag, that posture piece is really important to think about because you want to make sure that we're not straining different muscles to maintain that posture. I will say I did hear one of our gym teachers did a really great, and I think it was in the middle school, I heard about a scavenger hunt within the house, which I thought was great because it allowed a movement opportunity for the kids to come back and then share. So I thought any of those creative ideas are really important, but as parents and guardians at home, really important to think about your kids getting some movement opportunities, a quick walk around the block, squats in the house, jumping jacks, anything to allow them that time is going to be really important while we slowly chip in and get the kids back in the building.
That's great, thanks.
So continuing on, amidst the opening days, we also, the elementary schools also accomplished their kindergarten screening. Here's a picture that from Clark School. They utilized the outdoor tents to conduct that kindergarten screening. And there was a nice article in the Lynn item about the Clark Day. So kindergarten screening took place, they managed to get it done, and we utilized outdoor spaces. And then I wanted to go on to the facilities update. A lot of people are asking why we, are we going to get kids in sooner than the projected October 26th date? That's always our goal, but we're really dictated by what's going on with facilities, in addition to what Mrs. Raymond just said in terms of the spaces that we're using to catch up on testing, and also to do some assessments that Dr. Bacon will be talking about later, in order to figure out the gaps that may have occurred with our spring remote learning program. But some of the positives I wanted to highlight is that I believe Max Casper spoke about this at a previous meeting, but we, in addition to mobile hand washing stations, which you'll see in one of the isolation rooms, medical isolation rooms in a bit, Mrs. Seibert has ordered some heavy duty mobile washing sinks. In addition to that, under the direction of Max Casper, at Hadley, Stanley, and Clark, they have utilized old water fountain connections and replaced them with sinks. So here's an example of one at Clark School. There are two that have been installed at Stanley, one at Clark, and two at Hadley, one at Stanley, one at Clark. So I just thought it would be great for you to see how the creative thinking is going into facilities. Next page. And then here is an example of a medical isolation room at Swampscott High School. And the second picture in the far right, you'll see one of those lesser expensive mobile washing stations, but because they're needed in those medical waiting room, isolation rooms, that is the setup. That is the same office being used as the medical isolation room. And in addition to the setup, when I was visiting the schools, there were a lot of vans and mechanical HVAC plate vans at a lot of the schools. And the day I was visiting, they were installing the exhaust system in the Stanley School principal's office, which is now part of the nursing suite at Stanley School. So all exhaust systems have been installed at Swampscott High School, Stanley, and middle school medical isolation rooms. So that was done. There was a kickoff meeting with a mechanical contractor last week, and they've begun their work this week. And as part of that, Mrs. Raymond spoke a bit ago about each principal has identified the spaces that will be needed to bring in the next cohort of high needs students on October 5th. And this mechanical contractor and his team are going to those spaces and prepping them in order that they be verified and tested and balanced the way the proposal talks about, and be prepared for our students and staff to return on those days. As an aside, Mr. Casper told me that they're exploring the fluid, the middle school heating system, to potentially put glycol in instead of water. to avoid those freeze ups and pipe bursts that we've had. Last year, if you recall, our preschool went down for about 5 days, maybe more, because we had a pipe burst with the water in it. One of the things I heard Suzanne mention and Mrs. O'Connor and I have been talking about, I want to discuss further with the school committee, and it doesn't have to be at this meeting, but I really want to invite you to join me to visit the buildings with Mrs. Raymond one day over the next few weeks, so that you can see the setup that Mrs. Wright saw. You can see the medical isolation rooms. You can see the mobile sinks. I think it's important for you to see what's going on in the buildings and any kind of mitigation that's happening. So I'd like to coordinate that through my office and my executive assistant, Mrs. Karen, but I think it would be great if we could do visits. I know work schedules are difficult. I think it's most important for you to be there when the kids are there, but I'd be certainly happy to schedule something to accommodate schedules that might not be able to be done during the day. And my final 2 items on my superintendent's report are from our Director of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Bacon. There is some great stuff going on. I did get some feedback on the elementary education materials distribution and how the schedule was problematic. And maybe if Dr. Bacon can explain why the schedules were set, the schedules were set the way they were because of the materials, that would be great. I'll throw it over to Dr. Bacon.
Thank you. Would it be possible for me to share my screen for a minute?
Sure
I
enough.
have some photos that I'd like to share with you. So the superintendent's asked me to talk about 2 things that have been happening in the teaching and learning world. One is the distribution of educational materials. So over the past week, we've been organized at all the different school levels, elementary, middle, and high school, to distribute educational materials that students are going to be needing for their instruction this fall. If you recall, probably in an earlier talk with you, I shared that the first week we encouraged all faculty to devote their time and attention in their curricular work with their students to social emotional learning and building those relationships that'll be a foundation for a strong school year. So today, the 23rd, the 6th day of school, is the first day that students will be starting their academic programs in the traditional subject areas. So high school has been distributing textbooks and tons and tons of art supplies for the past several days. I think the seniors finished up yesterday. Middle school had a distribution of textbooks today. And I wanted to share with you what we were doing with the elementary schools. So can you all see my screen or not yet?
Not yet.
Okay, so I will share it now. So at the elementary schools, as you can imagine, an elementary classroom is often filled with lots of stuff. This is taking a second. There we go. So what we decided to do is take all the things that are normally in an elementary classroom and send them home so that when teachers are Zooming with their students, they can be manipulating the physical materials that are generally part of an elementary classroom. So we ordered and stocked, 700 some odd bins for each elementary school student. I have a couple pictures here of the stocking process. I think this is at, I can't remember what school I'm in.
It's at Stanley.
I'm at Stanley.
Yeah.
It's going on also, it's like a big whirlwind. But shout out to our reading and math specialists and tutors. They really took the lead in putting together the inventories for the bins, securing all the materials. We'd ordered several $1,000s worth of additional materials because, again, students are not in a classroom where they can share things. So we needed to buy supplemental materials for the bins. And I just wanted you to take a little bit of a tour. This is the things that would be in a 2nd grade bin that we're distributing. So this is a kit for foundations. In the plastic bag are little magnetic letter tiles that students, and that's a cookie sheet that we sort of improvised to give them a nice magnetic surface. And so they use these during their foundation lessons to learn how to build words and reinforce phonics and spelling. We also sent home a number of different student notebooks to support the Foundations program. We sent home a bunch of things for math at the lower grade levels, some manipulatives. Every student in the elementary schools got a set of dice and some cards for a lot of interactive math games that we hope they'll play at home. The 2nd grade kit included some graphic organizers that you can see here, some 10 frames, a number bonds chart, some chips that they'll use on the 10 frames to help them add and subtract and count. Some Unifix cubes that they also use for counting. They also got a couple whiteboards, which are very heavily used in elementary classrooms. So a teacher will be teaching something, ask the students for the response. The students will write down the response and then be able to hold it up to the screen, just like they would in a classroom, hold it up in a small, sort of a small group setting or a whole group instruction. So that allows the Zooms to be much more interactive and for the teachers to get immediate feedback on what the students are understanding or not understanding. So there's a couple different whiteboards for different purposes. The art teachers did a great job of putting together some materials. This is a journal that Rachel Eisenberg ordered. Oh, I think all the art teachers ordered. Sorry, my phone's going off. That students will start the year with, a sketchbook for them to start with their art projects. And then again, each school included some specific things around social emotional learning. This is a handout on zones of regulation where you see the different colors to help students better become more aware of their emotional state and manage their emotions. And then some calm down strategies for kids that the folks at Stanley added. So that's just a quick tour of the bins that we sent out to the students. The other thing that the superintendent asked me to update you on was the assessments that we're doing. So the phase 4 committee that met over the summer felt strongly that we needed to assess all our students when they're coming back. They haven't been with us since March. We didn't do a whole lot of assessment in the spring. We didn't do our normal spring assessments. So we really want to know where kids are entering so that we can provide the best education and kind of meet them where they're at in terms of their educational progress. So in grades 5 through 12, the teachers and their teacher teams and their departments are designing assessments in the core subject areas to make sure that students are ready for the course that they're entering. So if you took French 1 last year, do you have what you need to be able to be successful in French 2? So the teachers in that department will be designing those assessments, assessing their students in the next couple of weeks, and figuring out and identifying those students who may need additional remediation or support to get them caught up and allow them to be successful with the new school year, given this great gap we've all experienced in learning. At the elementary level, we had started an assessment I think I updated you on last year called AIMSweb for mathematics. We were piloting it last year with a few grade levels. This year we decided to use it for K to 4. So we're using that math assessment in grades 2 and up. It's a computer-based assessment, and in kindergarten and first grade, it's a one-on-one assessment where students respond to questions that are asked based on a sort of number sheet that they're looking on by a proctor. And then for this year, for reading, we've adopted a new assessment called iReady, which complies with DESE's new regulations about dyslexia screeners, because we're required to have dyslexia screeners for grades K to 2, I believe, or K to 3, I can't remember which. But we're using iReady K to 4, and that'll give us a lot of information on students' strengths and areas of that need improvement in their reading skills. So we started that today at the high school. We felt that that was the best place. So all the reading and math people who had been so busy with the bins up until last night, today started a full day of assessing students in person at the high school. So we set it up. Families are able to sign up for a slot. It takes about 2 hours. We give the students a mask and exercise break outside in between the 2 assessments. But it went really very well. We've had, half we're starting with our 3rd and 4th graders, and then over the next few weeks, we'll be working our way down the grade levels. So it was a great experience for us in terms of, this is really our first time managing a fairly sizable group of elementary students moving in and out of a building. So it was a great learning experience, but everyone did a great job. The kids did a great job. They were very focused. Everybody kept their mask on. Everybody was just terrific, and the families were terrific. We had a great system for checking them in and checking out the students at the end to make sure they go with the right families, because again, this is an unfamiliar location for them. But we're really pleased that we're able to move forward with these things. And then the superintendent asked me to just talk a little bit about sort of the timing issue that was, I know, challenging for families. We did try to get out a notice at the end of last week, but there was a little bit of miscommunication, and the notices didn't go out until Monday morning. But again, we would encourage families if a notice comes out, and then the bin distribution was set for this Wednesday. That's when the principals thought it would be appropriate. The teachers very much wanted to be involved. So we planned around that and wanted to plan it on a half day when the teachers don't have Zooms in the afternoon, and then we canceled the Zooms in the morning so all the teachers could participate at the schools when families came in to pick up their bins, because they really wanted to be able to see their students in person. And again, we would always encourage, if we ever invite you to do something and there's a timeline that doesn't work for you, just reach out to your building principal. We can always work with you to make accommodations if the timings don't happen to work for your family. So that's where we are.
It's really, so I guess, you know, Dr. Bacon's presentation for me was to express to the committee that although we're not in person, we're providing lots of in-person opportunities, and we committed to making those connections with our littles, and we're doing that right now in a variety of ways, be it assessment, be it materials pickup, trying to give a sense of belonging in terms of picking up their materials at their school instead of at a central location. I know it, you know, all of the reasons we're doing the things that we're doing are not out there because things are moving so quickly, but I think it's important for everyone to hear that we are doing a lot of things in person with students making connections. Amy?
I just want to say I am I'm blown away by this, and it's you know, I think that for many parents it was so difficult to imagine how this was going to be different from the springtime, and from all that you have just talked about, it's so obvious that we're a world away from what that experience was. So I don't know why it makes me feel a little bit emotional, but I'm really impressed.
But we hope it's going to be helpful for students and families. And again, we're really working hard to try to get everybody back in the buildings. And every step we take in building those relationships and trying to do things better is hopefully moving us in that direction.
Yeah, it's amazing. Kudos to you and your team.
I have one final item on my agenda that I'm going to throw to Ms. Seibert, and that is to talk about our food services program and our grab and go lunches. A shout out to Maureen Kellett, our Director of Food Services, and all that she's been doing, but I will throw it to Ms. Seibert for the statistics. I've been tweeting those beautiful lunches. They look very delicious.
They are, they're fantastic. And I want to piggyback on the theme that Dr. Bacon and Mrs. Cooper, Mrs. O'Connor just talked about, that we are trying to continue and foster connections to the building. And so Mrs. Kellett, when we were talking and trying to determine how best to do our grab and go meals, as you recall, last in the spring when we went out in March, we did them just from the high school. And we're doing grab and go lunches and breakfasts from all 5 schools. And Mrs. Kellett worked tirelessly to get a web link up there so that families can pre-order their meals, which we really need you to do so we can prepare what we need. But if you have students in multiple buildings, you can order meals for all your kids and pick them up at the same school. I know Mrs. Kellett shared with me that one family, when they were picking up, just said, we just want to stay connected to the building. And she said it just melted her heart because that's what she wants. And so with the food scarcity issues that we are having and we're facing, it's really important to reiterate that USDA, all these meals are free for students. You don't have to be free and reduced to come and pick up a meal. You just have to be a student. And to our Nahant and Boston-based students, we can direct you to the local school that's closest to your residence for you to pick it up as well. This is throughout the Commonwealth. It's not just here in Swampscott. So for our Nahant students, they don't have to come across the causeway to get lunch and breakfast. They can pick them up at the Johnson School in Nahant. And for our Boston-based students, we can help direct you to the closest school if you're in need of picking up a breakfast or a lunch. So I don't have the statistics, the numbers. I will for the next iteration, but I did provide the superintendent with another great picture of a very healthy chicken salad lunch that I'm like, you got to tweet this. We got to drive traffic to our link to get families in the habit of pre-ordering meals for the week. And we're going to continue to provide a well-balanced meals for all of our students. So kudos to Mrs. Kellett and her entire team. They're doing a great job. I see a question.
I want to
Sorry. So I know we want people to pre-order so that we know, where people are going and where we need to bring the meals. But if you haven't pre-ordered, can you still come to the school and pick up?
Yes, I mean, she's been making a few extras here and there to have a few extra, but I know that she did run out at one location earlier this week. So pre-ordering is best. And I know that, when people come up, staff are asking if they pre-ordered, they'll provide a meal, but we really do need to be able to better plan for preparation purposes. So, but we do have some available.
And I think one other item, I think, and Mrs. Marshall, you just speaking, I think I gave you the statistic for the emergency management team meeting, but I believe we had a total of 351 staff members screened for COVID, and we had 0 positive cases. So I think that's important to put out there, that our screening program for faculty and staff was very successful, 351 tests, 0 positive cases. And that concludes my report.
Okay, so I can't, it's like I don't know what to do with myself since it's only 8 o'clock.
Move it along, Mrs.
So
O'Connor.
we're going to move it along to the school building committee, because I know that there are some updates and a lot of new information, as well as get into the nitty gritty. We actually have time to focus on the policy. So Suzanne, do you want to take that?
Yeah. So the good news is, like always, tons is happening. So it's been awesome. We had a great meeting. Well, lots is happening, and mostly it's because we're feeling pressure. We have to pick an option soon. We got a 4-week extension from the MSBA, but we're coming down to the wire. And the good news is we spent some time last week looking at the Stanley site a little more closely, and mostly in response to a lot of neighbor concerns. And while we're at the site, we sort of, those of us that were there with the architect, we said, maybe we can look at this site a little more holistically, instead of just putting the building on this field, let's look at the whole site, because it's enough space to build a large school there. It's the only space in town. And so to his credit, Lee really listened to everything the neighbors were saying and forwarded a 7A and a 7B option. So I was going to try to pull it up. So that was great because now there's 2 more options on the table that I think will help people understand how a school could fit in that site. So that's the good news. People were concerned about how big the school was and kind of how close the neighbors were, and if the massing, is the school just going to feel giant next to my house? So so can you guys all see this? Can you guys? Okay. So like this first one right here is that one on top is the AB design. It's a 3-story building, and the red dotted line around it is the 2-story building. And it just shows how much of that field the building really takes up. And the concerns were on the top of the screen, the Whitman Road entrance, and on the upper left corner, the Cedar Terrace entrance, like that was so crowded and so close to the neighbors there. So these bottom 2 drawings are the 2 new ones, C and D. Show 2 different versions of this, moving the school. So when you pull into Whitman Road, you actually see the school ahead of you in C, or you see the school to your left still, but it's angled, and the whole front of the school, the gym, which is on the top, the administration, the upper school and the lower school entries, and the cafeteria, all those are 2-story or 1-story. So that when you pull around Whitman Road and you look at the building, you sort of see a 1 or 2-story building. And then the academic wings, the upper schools on the top of the building, and the lower schools, the bottom left corner. And you can sort of, you don't really see those as you drive up to the site, which is nice. So looking at this more holistically and taking into the whole site into account a little bit differently. So we have 2 new options. So that was exciting. I think it's really great. We have this design team that just really wants to make a a schoolwork for this town. So it was really working really hard to be responsive to everyone. So that was the good news. So upcoming, we have a meeting next week on the 29th. We've invited lots of boards and committees from town who have a vested interest in this, like the Open Space and Rec Committee, the Renewable Energy Committee, the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, the Council, or the Swampscott for All Ages, Earth Removal, whole bunch of committees like that to come and sort of talk about the options and tell us what they like about them and what they don't like about them, and ask what we could do better. Like what could we change to help you, forward your board's, goals. And in addition, hopefully Pam will bring her leadership team. I know you met with them, and to talk about these options and sort of talk about what each option means for our educational vision. And then after this meeting on the 29th, it'll be followed by a meeting on the 30th. That's going to be, the boards on that meeting are going to be the FinCom, the Capital Improvements, and the Select Board. And they're really going to talk about all the options and the pros and cons of financing the different options and sort of how it can work. So those two meetings are really important. And then we have a week off unless we need to have a week on. And then on the 13th, we're gonna deliberate and try to pick the best option. So school building committee members, I think we all need to sort of think about the best option for us too. I mean, and think about, I mean, I hope you'll listen to the meetings on the 29th and the 30th to so we can kind of wrap our heads around the pros and cons of all of them, and listen to what superintendent has to say and her educational team, and it's important for us to know from our perspective too, what the pros and cons are of the different options, and how we can make the ones we don't like better, or the ones that we do like even better. So am I missing anything, Pam?
No, I don't think so. I was really impressed with last night's presentation. It was even different from what I had seen last week. This 7D was something new and gave us a lot to consider as a leadership team. So it was a really great meeting. I would also shout out to Scott Burke, member of the school building committee, who sent an email to his precinct and really got a lot of neighbors there. And they were very receptive to the changes that were made by the design team as well. And it was nice to hear a very respectful, a very grateful, a very intelligent conversation and a lot of dialogue.
Yeah, ditto. So that's all good.
Suzanne, can I make a recommendation? Will you have Mrs. Karen put those meetings into our calendars that she manages for us with the links, so that
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay.
if you want us there, then we'll be there.
Yeah, I mean, so the boards and committees, some of them are everyone's being invited as a board, but really a lot of boards haven't had the opportunity to meet and deliberate on this together. So I'm sure people will be speaking as individuals. I mean, and that's the intent, that everyone's sort of looking at these plans and thinking about, based on their constituents or the goal of their committee, whatever their charter is, how does this option work for them? Like, I can imagine the Council for All Aging or the Swampscott for All Aging thinking, we want a building that we can use, and we want a building, if we're going to use it, we need parking there, right? We need parking on site so we can drive up and park and get into the building, right? So I imagine that everyone will have sort of different feedback on what they need from the school building. So yeah, so I'll put those on the calendar.
John, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, Suzanne, just a quick question. I'm curious how the vote is going. I know you've been out there encouraging folks to provide feedback.
To be honest with you, I haven't been checking it. I haven't been looking at how it's doing, because I feel like it skews it to even talk about it. If you say one thing's winning, then everyone who likes the other thing comes out. I don't even know. So people are a little confused now about the vote, because now there's two more Stanley options, And we're trying to explain to people that you're really voting for 3 different configurations. You're voting to redo Hadley like it is, build it back up with the 390 students that it is now, or you're voting to build a 3 through 5 school, or you're voting to build a K through 4 school. So we've been saying all along that these are just drawings. We know exactly the amount of square footage we need because the superintendent and all the educational visioning work, we've determined what kind of programming we want in this building. So we know the spaces we need. So now we're thinking about how it's going to lay on the space and sort of fine tuning it, which is what the design team is doing now when they rotate them on spaces. But basically, we're thinking of a 3 through 5, a K through 4, or a redo of Hadley. So that's hopefully what people are going to keep voting on. A mailer went out, I think it was getting dropped from Kirkland direct mailers today. So hopefully it'll be in people's mailboxes by this weekend so that there's even more responses. So a few hundred so far. We'd really like a few thousand. So.
All right, I see Tabitha's hand raised.
Oh, Tabitha, it's so happy to have a kid question.
Hi, so I don't know too much about the like the plans exactly on building the new school. I'm glad that we're gonna build one because we definitely need one for our town. I'm just concerned about, sustainability because we're thinking like this is a new school. It's supposed to last a long time. So like off of that, what is being done to make the school like environmentally friendly? Like which option implements like either like ways to like have water be recycled throughout the school or get power that is sustainably sourced and like just stuff like that. Like, are people considering that when designing the school? Are they considering options that implement like the newest technology that's best for the environment, or is it just, more of a budget monetary issue?
Suzanne, did you plant that question?
Awesome question, Tabitha. So since the very beginning of this project, we got a grant before this project even started to help us build this building as close to net zero as possible. And we got this grant so they can, from the very beginning of our planning stages, we can think about this. So at the end, we're not trying to like cram a solar panel onto like a roof that's too small, right? So we're trying to think about things like that. So we have a sustainability subcommittee that meets regularly to talk about things. And on that committee, we also have an open space and rec person and a conservation commission member too, because the sustainability also includes maintaining as much open space as possible and keeping as much nature and natural growth around the building as possible. So the short answer to your question is yes. So like I said, we're trying to build this building as an EUI between 20 and 30, which is really great. And we're looking at geothermal. We're looking at an all electric building. We're looking at a building that the town can use as an emergency shelter or something in the case we need it. We're looking at both these buildings, both C and D here on the Stanley site have north is at the top of the picture and south is at the bottom. So they have really great exposure for natural daylighting and things like that inside the building. I would love to have gray water catch basins to use in the toilets, but I don't know that we're going to go that far, but we definitely are looking at all sorts of sustainable materials. So, I mean, to answer your question, we are definitely trying to make this building a LEEDs. I mean, I want to say silver, but a really great building.
Okay.
So, yes.
Right. Thank you.
Love the question. Anyone else? All right. Oh, I should still share, so I should share this thing now, because are we doing policy now, Amy?
Yes.
All right. How do I share my screen again? Okay. All right. So last when we left it, we did sort of like, we talked about how the harassment policy that we need to adopt, we had some counsel weigh in and he thought we should use the one we currently have, but modify it to incorporate exemplar policy that the MASC sent us. So that's what this policy reflects that we did a first read of last time. And I'm just going to go through and remind you of the changes and alert you. I also had the director of HR look at this at 1.2 to weigh in, and then our legal looked at it one more time. So
before you jump in,
Yeah.
Suzanne, I'm going to sound like a complete dolt here. What does that mean, an exemplar policy?
Oh, well, MASC sent us an example of a new policy for sexual harassment based on the new law. They sent us a sexual harassment policy, and
Okay.
we didn't currently have a policy in our books called sexual harassment. We have a policy that used to be called policy against harassment based upon sex, gender, gender identity, race, color, national origin, religion, age. That was what our policy was called. So Darren was suggesting we keep that policy and we just update the sexual harassment language in it because it already has all the other protected classes in it. So that's what I mean.
Okay.
So the first change here was right here, this title. Look at me, I'm going to annotate it. A new title, we're just going to call it policy against harassment instead of the long one we had before. And then the screenwriting here reflects things that HR thought we should add. We don't have the protected classes. We didn't have pregnancy and genetic information in our harassment policy, and those are protected classes. So we were, so she thought we should add those. And then this red language is language that's just kind of rewriting our policy to meet the standard that was in the MASC policy. Just changed the language a little bit. We didn't change anything substantive there. This is a new bullet since the last read. In the employment context, taking adverse employment action such as discipline, demotion, termination, or non-consideration for promotion is this policy pertains to teachers and students. So every once in a while, there's something that defines like how it's different for an employee. All this red language is the new sexual harassment language that came from that other policy. So that's just inserted here when we had our sexual harassment bullet. Now it's the new language per the new law. And then all this we already did. Darren suggested we insert this description of what a disability is. We didn't currently have this in our policy, and I don't know that there's any harm in defining it in here. Then to keep going, referral, all this stuff is, oh wait, I forgot the one part. Oh, this C right here. In our policy, in our current policy, C is really long. We have every single protected class, like we say, race, and then we have these 3 bullets, and then we have color and 3 bullets, and national origin, the 3 bullets. So instead, Darren said we could just group them all together and not have to, waste 3 pages on that. So sorry, that was in the policy we read last week. I had those just crossed out. Now I just took the cross outs and just put them in the paragraph by how it's going to look. And then the big change is this one. We need to vote on this tonight. And then before we vote on the policy, we need to decide whether we're going to use clear and convincing evidence or a preponderance of the evidence to decide whether or not a harassment complaint will proceed. So this is where we left it last time. And my vote was for my vote was for preponderance. I know John probably still feels clear and convincing evidence is the way to go. Darren, his counsel was preponderance. As I explained before, preponderance just means more than likely. And if someone is more than likely being harassed, I feel like we should pursue that complaint. And we don't have to wait until it's clear and convincing that they are. So
we're talking specifically about whether or not to move forward with
Investigating.
Investigate. So this is not about whether or not somebody loses their job or.
Oh, no, this is literally about investigating. I mean, yeah. I think that
Really a big distinction that we have to understand, that we're not, that it's not evidence for making a determination of guilt, right, or innocence, but whether we're going to investigate something.
so this isn't like a court. Like if someone does something that's is egregious enough to bring charges, that's a whole different ball game, right? This is about something happening student to student or teacher to student or student to teacher or whatever, right? Like to say that some sort of harassment is happening, and we need to decide if the person tells us about it, do we investigate? And we have to decide, we are going to investigate because there's a preponderance of evidence that this really happened, or are we going to wait to see if there's much more clear and convincing evidence that happened? And then
So, hey, Suzanne, do you mind if I just
no, jump in.
just clarification. So my understanding was that regardless of which standard is adopted, things are going to be investigated. So complaints made, an investigation will be initiated. All complaints will be taken seriously. That was kind of my understanding. Whatever the standard isn't going to determine whether an investigation is initiated. It's just once it is initiated, the standard that will apply during that review, that's when the standard kicks in. So I don't think it's a gating criteria which standard we adopt, whether an investigation gets started. The investigation will get started. It's just once it does get started, how will it be evaluated under which standard? So I guess
you're right. You're right. Everything's going to be like looked at to get preliminary evidence for, right? And then you're going to decide.
Well, Suzanne, it says final decisions will be made.
Right.
So
Right.
what are those decisions?
So John, can you talk a little bit more about, I'm kind of curious just to hear from the both of you, like why one versus the other? And John, I know you and I had a brief conversation about this last week.
Yeah, and Amy, I think, like I said during the last meeting, a couple of the concerns that I had were just around due process considerations for everybody, not just the person who makes the complaint, but the person who is being accused, whether it's a student or whether it's an employee or a teacher. My concern, as I said the last time, was under the preponderance standard, which is the lower standard, somebody could have an accusation made against them and could have serious career repercussions. A student could have college implications, under this lower standard. And one of the things that I had said the last time was under the higher clear and convincing standard, the investigation will be started, the complaint will be taken seriously, but the standard is such that it's not just 50% plus just a little more, which is the preponderance. It would have to be a little bit more than that. And it's not 100%, it's somewhere more than 51%. So I think that will protect the employees, that will protect the students, and again, it will protect everyone in the process. And I think just, Amy, one of the other things I was thinking about since the last meeting was just, there is, and I think Ted touched on this during the last meeting as well, the awareness of harassment and sexual harassment out there now is much more prevalent than it was in years past. So I think, to folks that might be concerned about, well, if we go with the higher standard, voices won't be heard, and I know that's a concern. I think Again, the awareness is such now that that's just not going to happen. I think, instilling, some protection in the process for everybody here, I think is just is simple fairness. This is not a court where, as I said, other protections would apply. It's a school setting, so the more protections we can have, again, to protect everybody, that's really how I'm approaching this, Amy. And, again, I think it just serves everybody well in the end to have a standard that's, that calls for just a little bit more than 51%.
But I think about this from this, I'm thinking about this from the standpoint of, say this were, a teacher or, somebody with a complaint coming from a student, or, I would think that any shred of evidence, let alone a preponderance, even would factor in like the level of scrutiny should be, any indication of it, so like in some ways I would almost argue less, because we don't have the ability to, because we have children that we're protecting.
I
don't know.
Can I share something too, just as the civil rights officer in the district?
So I just want to say, first Martha, you, and then afterwards Tabitha has a comment or a question.
I tried to raise my hand. I can't get it to come up on my
It's okay. It's okay.
I just wanted to share that many of these investigations that occur have little, are one person's word against another person's word. And so I do worry about having that that higher standard. I think the lower standard actually is more appropriate. And I will say, from most research that comes out, it's that abuse or sexual abuse or harassment is usually underreported because people are afraid to report it. The research doesn't support that people are accused too much of it. It's more that it's underreported. And so I think that the protection needs to be err on that side of it. That's my opinion as someone who does the civil rights in the district.
Right. Tabitha, you want to take yourself off mute?
Martha covered a lot of the stuff that I was going to bring up as well. And John, I completely see what you're saying, how you want to just ensure a fair trial for both parties involved, no matter what the harassment claim is. But the language itself of clear and convincing evidence doesn't show a lot of sympathy for someone who's speaking up about harassment. And looking at the language, like in a case where there's someone being harassed, yes, it's like what Martha's saying, people often don't speak up about it because of fear, either of a power of someone who has authority or for the social consequences that could follow. And even in like situations of harassment, it can be very difficult to prove clear and convincing evidence. So to base final decisions upon that does not always seem fair for someone who may be a victim of harassment. And I understand we don't want to come to any rash conclusions about anything. We don't automatically want to say this person came forward, they're right no matter what. But just the language itself of clear and convincing evidence does not show any support for someone who could be a victim of harassment. So if obviously groups don't vote, but if I were to vote, I would vote for preponderance, because that leaves more room to be sympathetic towards someone, and even more fair, just looking at the statistics behind harassment and victims of harassment.
I don't have my full screen. Is Ted on the call, or did he have to go away?
I think he had to do his thing.
Oh, okay. I was going to say I'd be curious to hear from a police
Yeah,
officer.
I kind of feel like that would have been important to hear law enforcement.
John's hand is back up.
John, go ahead.
So yeah, just to add on to, and I completely appreciate what others have said here. Again, what I'm hearing is that people won't be coming forward because of a higher standard. And, you know, I firmly believe this is not something that will prevent people from coming forward. It's just once a complaint is made, it will be reviewed carefully and offers protection for everyone involved in this process. So someone doesn't have their lives ruined because of an accusation. And again, I think all of us want, you know, if someone's being harassed, we want it to stop. And we don't want to put someone's head on a stick. We don't want to ruin lives here. And I think we all can agree on that. And again, my view is that the higher standard provides that protection to everyone involved in this process. Again, to make sure that things are carefully reviewed at that standard and outcomes that support the evidence are reached. Again, no one is being prevented from coming forward. As I've said previously, and again, firmly believe, all complaints should be taken seriously. All complaints should be fully investigated. So this is not something where someone's not going to be able to come forward under this higher standard. It's not the case. And you know, again, it's to protect everyone involved and bring fairness to a process. Frankly, fairness to a process that in 10 years of a preponderance standard that was adopted, I think, in 2011 by most schools and colleges, there were many instances where, under a preponderance standard, you know, people that were accused, whether it was students, employees, faculty, you know, just did not get a fair outcome. And you know, under a higher standard, the outcome probably would have been more equitable for everybody involved. So that's, again, Amy, that's my view on it. Again, I hear what everybody's saying here. And I appreciate it. Again, just I think for everyone's protection involved in the matter, I think the higher standard is more appropriate.
I have a hard time going against counsel on this one. I just feel like, you know, Darren's statement that you pick clear and convincing when you want to give the benefit of the doubt to the victim, and you pick preponderance, you know, when you want to protect the perpetrator. And I mean, I think that's a little too black and white, but I think we're in the business of taking care of kids, and I would just naturally err on the side of caution. And I don't want to wreck anyone's life, but I want to make sure a child who has experienced harassment isn't having their life wrecked as well, you know, by not being able to convince anyone that this is happening because there's just a he said, she said, or something that maybe isn't 95% sure. It's more like 60% sure or 51% sure, and no one's really believing it because all the evidence isn't there. But I just think that we're in the taking care of kids business. That's just, it's hard to I mean, I see your point. I just have a hard time being too concerned about that side of it more than the victim side.
Well, especially since we're talking about kids.
Yeah, I don't know. So,
you know, and the idea of having, say, a teacher at our school who, you know, a preponderance of evidence suggested that they did it, but a clear and convincing evidence suggested or can't be, so that teacher stays.
Right, right. If even if you're like gives me a I don't know. It's or the other way around too. I mean, you know, yeah.
So is the rule that this policy has to be written in such a way that it applies the same way to student adult versus adult? can we not have two different standards if we're talking adult on adult?
No, it's the same. I mean, I haven't seen anything that indicates it's different. This is
I just want to also share that this is usually, I think Tabitha touched on this really well, is that this is usually about power. One person has power over somebody else. And I think that's where also the evidence in terms of determining did this occur or not occur should favor more in terms of the victim because of the power piece, right? So I think that's something that we really have to consider, because that is when we're looking at, did harassment occur? There is a power differential usually when we're looking at this, and that person in power can really control what the evidence is.
I'm sorry, what person would that be? I'm not following.
So usually when we're looking at sexual harassment, any types of investigations of that nature, there's usually a power issue with it. Like when we go through our training, where you're told about what can a subordinate do with someone above you. Like there's a piece of this that has a power differential usually. And so I think that's, we also have to consider that too, which is why probably that is why it was preponderance of the evidence, right? Because the victims it was very difficult for them to prove sexual harassment. That's why this shifted. It was happening a lot and nothing was happening about it, I guess. So I just wanted to share that piece, and Tabitha spoke to it.
Did the HR department weigh in on this prior?
Yeah, I mean, this is yes, and her vote's preponderance, and I mean, yeah, and as is Darren's, but not that they're voting, but I think that maybe people are having a problem because we are putting we're grouping sexual harassment with all the other protected harassment of all the other protected classes. But, and so in sexual harassment, when there is a power struggle, I completely 100% agree with you, Martha, but I also think all the other types of harassments, I feel strongly that all the victims should be protected from, I don't know, it's just, I'm not sure if that's what's happening here, is that we're trying to put this standard on all harassment, not just sexual harassment, but I think it's the right thing to do.
But just to clarify, what we're talking about is just for the sexual harassment piece.
It's for harassment. It's for harassment, period. Okay. And really, when you think about it, gender, sexual identity, gender, all those things, I think there's a fine line between a lot of different kinds of harassment and what the motivation is, right? So I think putting all the harassment together is a good bucket. And I think that, to Martha and Tabitha's point, it's definitely, I definitely I'm in favor of preponderance of evidence.
So just to reiterate, council was in favor of preponderance and HR was also in favor of preponderance.
Yes.
I just want to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about. It's complicated. That's what you said, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to call a vote. I'm going to. Yeah, can somebody make the motion?
So I make a motion to adopt the standard of preponderance of evidence for the harassment policy.
Do I have okay, so I have a second. And do any discussion before, any further discussion before?
Yeah, so Amy, this is John. Just one other thing. I don't want folks to think I'm just being legalistic on this or trying to take, kind of a academic approach to this. I'm looking at this as a parent, as a father. And, one of my kids had a terrible bullying problem years back, and we just wanted it to stop. And, like I said, we didn't want to wreck anyone's life or reputation or anything else. And looking at it from that perspective, and also, again, some of the other criteria I mentioned, again, I think more protection is better than less protection for everyone involved. I think a lower standard with less protection doesn't in the end help. A higher standard doesn't keep anybody from coming forward. I'm hearing that, and I'm just not, I'm afraid that's just not the case where, someone will come forward, the complaint will be made, it'll be taken seriously. I just wanted to throw that out because as a parent, as a father, I think it's important that, if it's your kid that's involved and, is facing an accusation, I would think you would want the most protection you can when they go into that process rather than the least amount of protection, which was what the preponderance will do. So, again, we don't want to, put someone's head on a stick here. We want whatever it is to stop. If it needs to be dealt with separately in a criminal setting, it'll be dealt with separately. But again, just introducing the fairness to that process. Again, bringing due process to everybody here. So thank you, Amy, for letting me just add that on here before we take the vote.
No, I appreciate that, John. And I think particularly with your background, to hear that is important. So thank you. Okay, so roll call vote. I am going to start with Karen.
Yes.
Suzanne.
Yes.
There's no Ted, I'm assuming?
No Ted.
No Ted. John?
No.
And I'm going to vote yes. So it passes. I do want to say the passes that we're going to use a preponderance of the evidence. I do want to say I really appreciate you bringing this, John, and having this kind of debate. So despite the fact that it's our first well, no, I guess last week we had a vote that wasn't unanimous as well. I want to, sort of put it out there that I like how this rolled out. So for whatever that's worth. But for me, I think the fact that it was our lawyer and our HR recommending that was my rationale for voting with a preponderance. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything, including you, John.
No, I feel like what Tabitha and Martha had to say about reporting is true, and I have a personal experience with this too, and I think it's really important to have the victim's voice have some strength.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's.
Anyway, we have to finish this policy, Amy. So,
okay.
So since we're making this harassment policy for all harassment, every time this said sexual, I just crossed it out. And then this record keeping requirement, we have to keep records about sexual harassment. So this shouldn't be crossed out. Now that I'm looking at it, this sexual shouldn't be crossed out because we have to keep records for sexual harassment. And yeah.
Wouldn't we keep paperwork for all harassment though?
Yeah, but by law, I mean, we could have policies or protocols for keeping paperwork for anything, but by law, we have to keep it for this.
Okay. All right.
Just part of that law. And we need to identify our Title IX coordinator. So, and Darren said we can't just put her name there. We should put the contact information, just like these other where complaints may be filed. And then in the end, these are things we have to do based on this law. We need to send a summary home to parents that we have this law. And Darren said he would write a summary that, because I'm not sure who else would do it. And as part of back to school training for staff, this law needs to be addressed. And then you need to have your internal appeal process. I think you probably already have this, Martha, but you just need to make sure who hears appeals internally, or I don't know. I don't know what you have, Martha, for your protocols for harassment complaints. I'm sure
we don't have many of them, but when we do it, we do an investigation. But, a lot of times that, I think as John was saying too, they do tip into, especially with our MOU, with our police department and our resource officer, things tend to tip quickly there.
So we should establish here that this is from HR. We should have an internal appeal process should be established. Mm-hmm. So the district can just decide who the people are. Certainly it won't include the person that's been accused. If Title IX coordinator is being accused, they'll have to recuse themselves from being part of this process. But there should be a panel of some other people that look at stuff, mm-hmm. and you should decide who those people are ahead of something happening. Was the recommendation. Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah, and so I can ask Darren to write the summary, and then training will just have to be added on to teacher orientation stuff.
Is that something that Pam, I would imagine this is not our domain, but that we could get somebody from KP to come in and give?
Yeah, absolutely. We would figure it out. We have a bunch of mandatory trainings added to the list and figure out. They might do a presentation that they have to run through and sign.
Right. Right. There might be something. I mean, I'm sure there's something online that could be used.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to call a vote on the policy itself.
So I'll make a motion to adopt the new ACH as written.
Yes.
Or as edited.
As edited. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, a roll call vote. Suzanne?
Yes.
John?
No.
Karen?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So the motion passes. So now the second piece of it is, do we need to close anything out on the to-dos from the school committee side?
No, no, I think Martha Raymond should take care of the appeal process. Pam or whoever will take care of the training. Yes. And I'll email Darren about a summary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This brings us to our consent agenda. The consent agenda is designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the district. The school committee may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion. At the request of any committee member, any items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. Tonight we have three pieces. The regular session minutes from our last meeting on September 9th. B, a donation from an anonymous donor giving us some Chromebooks and supplies, which is very generous. And as we learned earlier tonight, much needed, as well as warrants number 2110 and 2112. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussions?
Is Martha Seibert still on here?
Yes, I am.
So nice of you. Are all those tents, like, do we have a separate like line item that's all the CARES Act things, or how we're funding all that?
We do. It was funded through one of our grants, one of the many grants, and I covered that earlier in a subcommittee meeting with the budget committee. And I will update the committee next week if you'd like. I can go walk through all of them. And
I just was like, I was just looking at those bills thinking like, I just didn't know, like I saw you had like a line item thing or whatever, a code. And I was like, oh, it must be about how it's getting funded or whatever. Cause I'm just curious.
yes.
I mean, I'm sure you're keeping track of all that, and I'm sure it's just crazy, but yeah.
There are multiple grants on the school side, and then there's one large one on the town side. And through those various funding sources, we are covering all of our expenditures.
And how do we decide with the town when the town funding source is being used?
So as I mentioned in the subcommittee, the town has been very supportive of the school department and their needs when it comes to COVID-related expenses. Some of the larger expenditures have been picked up by that $1.4 million CARES grant on the town side, specifically the $165,000 for mechanical maintenance and testing and balancing, the $50,000 LBA assessment. I'm trying to think what other, there was some of the early on Chromebook purchases were made out of that. All of our PPE has been charged to that grant. So I would estimate between $600,000 and $700,000 has come from the town side. And I continue to work very closely with the town accountant and the assistant town manager or town administrator, Mr. Mendez.
That's great to hear.
And as well as my own team of Dr. Bacon and the superintendent for which grant are we going to put this on? So it's been very collaborative and very strategic and very thoughtful about where we're charging things. Because most of our grants end on December 20th, but the ESSER grant does have a longer shelf life. It goes to June 30th, 2021. So we're very strategic about what we placed on the ESSER grant. For example, a lot of the technology that we had to purchase, the Zoom licenses, the Lightspeed filter, things like that, that have a 1-year license, those were charged to the ESSER grant because we couldn't charge those to the grants that end on December 20th. So, so we've been very thoughtful and very strategic about what grants are funding which purchases that are needed.
All right.
Probably more of an answer than you wanted.
No, helpful. Okay, so with that, then I'm going to take a roll call vote. John?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so that passes. And unless there's anything anybody else would like to add, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Well, isn't it sad that we're thrilled that a meeting only lasted 2 hours? So I will roll call vote for Karen?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
And I make it unanimous, adjourned at 8:52. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Welcome to our new folks.
Welcome, ladies. Yes.
Thank you.
So Suzanne, I press stop.
Stop recording.
Just don't